welcome to AM News Network presents Summary Judgment. I'm attorney Rachel Baird, and I'm joined by my co-host Ed Peruta today. Ed, are we going to get a green screen in?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think he has to push like the 3 button or something like that to put the background up or do whatever.
This is a weekly show that we
And I
do
have to
from
adjust the
Harwinton,
camera.
Connecticut, transmitting live every Saturday. And Ed, we have some important subjects today.
We do.
Let's let Ed adjust the camera.
Yeah, now it's on its side. Oh boy. Nothing ever goes right. Okay, we'll do this.
Ed, why don't you come introduce yourself?
Okay. Okay, my name is Ed Peruta. I'm the president of American News. It's basically a spot news and information business. Been around since 1989. We're at the American News Media Center in Harwinton, Connecticut, and we're doing a show at 10 o'clock today.
And we want to inform anybody who's never watched our show that we're doing a special show today. And I want you to talk about your affiliation with J.C. Playford and David Warden in Texas.
All right. 8-9 years ago, I met J.C. Playford out in Southern California. He was very instrumental in providing American News with accurate information regarding a serial killer that got caught after victim number 2. And I heard the story about how the Sheriff's Department and the San Diego Police Department had revoked his San Diego issued media credentials. And I said, well, screw theirs, I'll give you a set of mine if this is what you do. So J.C. Playford got a set of American News media credentials, and J.C. Playford started a YouTube account called News Now San Diego. All one word. And J.C. Playford is one who does not back down when confronted by government officials who infringe upon his right to gather news or to attend news conferences or, do whatever. A lot of people were watching News Now San Diego, J.C. Playford's YouTube account, and I heard about and had made contact with an individual in Houston, Texas named Dave Warden.
Well, when we filed our complaint on behalf of J.C. Playford and American News in the Southern District of California, San Diego, back in, I think it was 2012.
Okay.
I remember at that time drafting the complaint, and this complaint has to do with the fact that J.C. Playford was arrested 4 times.
Yeah.
And we claimed that it was in retaliation for his exercise of First Amendment rights.
Right.
Video recording police activity of public concern.
Right.
And at that time, I remember putting in the complaint that he had 12,000 subscribers on YouTube.
And now he has 28.
Right. And it expanded outward from there where you were contacted by David Warden.
Right. And, I had a conversation with David Warden, as I do with a lot of people that call American News, looking for media credentials. And contrary to popular belief, even on the part of the people that call me, I don't charge people to get a set of press credentials. It's not a revenue-generating media credential operation. There's a lot of back and forth verbally between the person who would like to represent American News or have American News recognize what they do. And in that conversation, David Warden was very, what's the word I'm looking for? Transparent, open, honest. Because I say to everybody, what do you do? Who are you? What do you do? Where do you do it? Why do you do it? What's involved? Do you have any videos that I can look at to see the type of videos that you're shooting? David Warden passed the test. Even after describing to me, not so much as advising me that he had a criminal incident in his past, what the criminal charge was, that he had gone to trial, that he had been convicted, that he had done some time. And I said, look, you'd paid your debt to society. Are you a straight-up citizen now? Yes. I said, okay. The past is the past. Let's go forward. I said to him, here's what you need to do, Dave. You need to go out to YouTube, and you need to start a YouTube account, News Now Houston. And David Warden went ahead and started News Now Houston. And I issued him a set of press credentials. David Warden is recognized by American News as a valid person to shoot spot news events, gather information, feed it to the mainstream media, or, in his case, publish it on a channel that now has, get this, 148,000 followers. Well, there are newspapers in this country that don't have 148,000 subscribers. Whatever David Warden was doing...
And can you imagine when you think about a YouTube site like News Now San Diego or News Now Houston, where there are a lot of people that are interested in the content and what JC and David do, but don't want to be on record as being interested or as watching these sites.
Right.
So, to me, the number of subscribers is only a portion of the actual people that are impacted and watch these sites. I mean, on this show, we talk a lot about the silence of people who support Trump. You know, my office is here in Harwinton, Connecticut, and I have a 6-foot cardboard cutout of Donald Trump in my office, in the front of my building, in my window. And I can't count the number of times in the past 3 years where people have said to me, I like Donald Trump, but I can't tell anybody. Am I right?
Exactly.
And I think the same thing applies to these type of YouTube sites.
Look, let me explain. My entire adult life has been half the people like me, half the people hate me.
Well, you hope it's half.
It could be more than that.
Yeah.
But that's not the point.
No, it's not the point.
You know, I'll give you an example. I ran for public office in the town of Rocky Hill, Connecticut, I believe in like 1991. And to win, you had to have like 16,000 votes. And I got like 500 votes. I ran for city council in Vero Beach, Florida. And you needed like 1,200 votes to get elected. And I had 400 votes. And when they came up to me after the election, they said, well, Ed, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I want you to stop and think about something. 435 people liked what I was talking about or agreed with me to the point that they supported my candidacy. I'm now bigger than the Republican Women's Club. I'm bigger than the Civitan Club. I'm bigger than a lot of political groups that the politicians go to seek their support. In other words, if I say to somebody, vote for this person, my supporters may vote for that person. If I say don't vote for this person, my supporters may say I'm not voting for him because Ed Pruitt says he's no good.
Right. So what we're beginning the show with today is sort of a description and explanation of the relationship of American News with News Now Houston, News Now San Diego, going a little back in time, and then we're going to address the current situation with News Now Houston, play a video from News Now Houston of David Warden, and J.C. Playford has weighed in, and we're going to play his video as well. But we have a number of other topics that we're going to then get to, and we have gone over the 1,000 subscriber list on
Yeah,
YouTube.
we got 1,235, I think.
Well, you know, Ed, when I argued a case back in, I don't know, 2015 or 16, where we sued the Hartford Police Department for preventing you from recording video, you know, I remember telling the court at that time that we had between 200 and 300 subscribers. So this is just something that we do as a labor of love. We do.
Well,
and we love the fact that people that we're getting more subscribers, but we've been doing this for over 4 years now. We started in May 2014, and we've done it consistently, and we've said what we want to say, despite what the numbers are or not.
Well, okay, so
But my point was, now that we've gone over 1,000 subscribers, we can send out a community message about what the content of our show is going to be, and that's what I did this morning. And we're going to be talking today.
And we do have day jobs.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be talking today about the big issues like David Warden, News Now Houston. We're going to be talking about the fact that American News, your company, was got the exclusive on the investigation report that was released of Trooper Miller's fatal accident. That's a Connecticut State Police trooper who died in a fatal accident when he ran into the back of a truck, and that was released Wednesday. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some other issues. You know, I was interested in this story from Humboldt, California, where two sisters went missing and then they were found, and then the interview process and how the media portrayed that. We were at the Bridgeport, Connecticut State Police yesterday. You observed a refusal by the state police to fingerprint somebody, which I found interesting as well. And, you know, if we get to anything else, we get to anything else. But those are the main subjects we're going to be talking about today. But we're starting, obviously, with News Now Houston.
Here's the main reason that I wanted to, because you've got an engagement to go to this afternoon. It's a funeral of a very good friend. And we did the show early. But this is my reason for sitting in this chair today. I support David Warden and what he does with News Now Houston. I support him. I support him. I support him. Unless somebody can bring to me something that David Warden has done in the last 10 years or the last 5 years or that he's currently doing, if he's paid his debt to society, that's in the past. David Warden has, in fact, been very successful at what he does with a camera and a YouTube channel. And I am proud of the fact that I, in some small way, may have helped him on the path to News Now Houston. Now, I believe that David Warden is on the other side of the cameras. He's got a phone in his hand. I do have his phone number. I did tell him that I would call him. He, in fact, has given us permission to transmit this show on his YouTube channel, News Now Houston, and I would like you, if you could, to just check News Now Houston to see if we're going out to News Now Houston.
Okay, I will do that.
But I'm going to call David. Mm-hmm. We have, I believe, possibly a phone call. Nope, looks like it hung up. Let me just check. Okay. I'm going to do this right now. Hold on.
Morning.
Are you watching?
Oh, I was watching it, yes.
Are we going out on News Now Houston?
Yes, you are.
Okay. David, I'd like to introduce you to everybody on the other side of the cameras who are watching us on News Now San Diego and on Summary Judgment and on News Now Houston. You're live. I don't know if you heard what I had to say about when we first met. You were totally open with me about your past. I told you, leave it in the past. Let's work towards the future. And I am very proud of the fact that I may have had some small piece of convincing you to start News Now Houston on YouTube by giving you a set of press credentials and suggesting that you do what J.C. Playford does.
Yes.
Hi, David. It's Rachel.
Good morning, Rachel.
Thanks for being on the show.
Did you see that I made a donation to PayPal for you?
Yes, sir, I did. Thank you.
Okay.
Dave, why don't you talk a little bit about that? That you've set up an account and what that account is for, and how people can access that account.
I've actually got a new site that is set up that can't be attacked or removed because the trolls have been going after everything else. People in this community, it amazes me. I have been shocked by the people in this community and their reaction to this. Basically, a lot of people have convicted me without hearing my side of it. And unfortunately, because it's an active criminal case, I can't give my side of it, and they know that. But they also, the people in this community have seen for years and years how the police lie and manipulate to get charges like this. Here in Harris County, there's a procedure for this. Basically, what they do is they go to a grand jury. When they have an allegation from 20 years ago, before they do any kind of arrest on it, they go to a grand jury and they get an indictment first. In this case, Deer Park didn't do that. They went to a magistrate judge, not an elected official, a magistrate judge, and got what's called a probable cause warrant. That's all it is. It's just an allegation warrant. And, you'd have to ask, or normal people would ask, why was I done differently than everybody else? And the answer is obvious.
Yeah.
These people know that the case isn't going to stick. But the allegation, just this allegation, is enough to do me harm. And in the public eye, that's how it is. And all these auditors and people in the civil rights movement have fallen for that. And it saddens me that these people would do that, because above everybody else, they should know better. They should know better. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
You did. I'm always interested.
We tell clients to keep their mouth shut all the time.
I'm always interested as an attorney when someone says, I was treated differently from the norm, because you wonder why that is. Now, here in Connecticut, David, we only have warrants. We don't, it's state court. We don't have grand juries. I think there may be one or two exceptions, and I don't know the last time one of those exceptions was even used. So we're used to just probable cause warrants. But I know that other jurisdictions have grand juries, and what you're saying is that it's very unusual in Harris County. Is it Harris County?
Yes.
For a warrant to be signed instead of having a grand jury decide if there's probable cause for an indictment. And
yes, on these type of accusations, when they're this old and family members are involved, but keep in mind, this case was investigated already and was taken to the district attorney already, and it was all cleared. It was all found unfounded and rejected. And here we are 20 years later, when two of my primary witnesses have died. My brother is deeply involved in this. They've died, and so, this is ridiculous that they can go that far back with something like this. But it's okay. I'm fine with it. I'm ready to deal with it, and we'll get it done.
Dave, let me ask you a couple of questions just so we can clear the air here a little bit.
All right.
Do you believe that every police officer is corrupt?
No, absolutely not. I have, in the course of this event, have had contact with some good police officers that have assisted me along the way, and some that continue to assist me. I'm kind of saddened that there aren't more coming out. I'm really shocked that there aren't more stepping up to help because they know what's going on. But
Okay.
it is what it is, and I'm thankful for the ones that have.
Okay, next question. Do you believe that there are bad police officers?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you believe that law enforcement has a problem cleaning their own house?
Absolutely.
Do you believe that the video camera is a extremely valuable tool in? I gotta turn this down.
Mm-hmm.
That the video camera and a person with a set of balls willing to stand their ground is probably the best deterrent to bad law enforcement.
Absolutely.
All right.
It's somebody that's on the outside of the departments and people that they can't control, video footage they can't control, and they hate that. They hate that.
Rachel and I have coined the phrase that in order to control the message, you have to limit the messengers.
And I don't think we originated that. I just want to be clear.
Well,
but it's something we.
I need
believe in.
to.
That is absolutely true. The police have forever controlled the narrative. Whatever they said happened,
Yes.
well, that's just what people believe. They just automatically believed it because there was never any contrary evidence. There was never anybody standing up saying, look, there's video. We can show that they're lying. And we've seen that here in Harris County. It really started with me. And my shell arrest. The narrative that they produced for the police report was 100% different than what my body camera footage showed.
Exactly.
David, we had a case last year, and the video is available at our YouTube site.
Got
Summary Judgment
149,000
Talk
views.
Show. And I was doing a motion to suppress, and there was body cam footage. And I said to the officer, I said, what did my client say? And he said, she said it was in a lockbox.
The firearm was in the lockbox.
And that's what he, in fact, put in his written report under oath.
That's what they put in the arrest warrant application.
And that's the basis why she was arrested for misleading an officer.
Interfering with the police officer.
Interfering with the police officer. And I presented the body cam footage to him in court. And what my client said was the gun is locked in the house, which I won't go into detail, but it made all the difference in the world in the case. Okay? And the officer actually said, when I asked him, I said, if it wasn't for the body cam footage, would you be sitting here testifying under oath that she said it was in a lockbox? And he said yes. So I can't emphasize enough how true that is and how important what you do is, because I think what you do has affected substantially the decision by law enforcement all over the country, not only what you do and what other people do similar to you, to get body cams, because they're saying, you know what, when we don't have body cam and they have a video recorder, they're controlling the narrative. We're letting it go. So we have to have body cam, so we have as much input into the narrative as possible. And so what you do has been so important to me for the direction that this country's going in changing who controls the narrative and putting us on equal footing with law enforcement.
Well, and, the thing about body cameras is that they're a double-edged sword.
Yes.
If you're doing wrong, they're going to show that. But if you're doing right, they're going to show that too.
But see,
so
that's...
if you're out there doing the right thing, you have nothing to fear from body cameras.
Right,
And yet, some of the most corrupt police departments in the United States are fighting
Absolutely.
All right, now let me tell you another story, and it's hot off the press. Yesterday, I was videotaping, I'm not going to mention names. Yesterday, I was videotaping in the Superior Court, the Geographical Area, GA Criminal Court in Bridgeport, Connecticut, a hearing in front of Judge Iannotti. And part of the presentation made by the individual who made the private citizen who made the motion was, I was charged with these crimes. 2 of them were resolved and 3 of them were not. And the prosecutor, state's attorney, was on the record saying, no, they were nollied.
On the record.
On the record. And the individual presented to the judge a transcript of the hearing on the date that the prosecutor said the charges were nollied or not to prosecute. And the judge, I got him on camera flipping through the pages of the transcript, and he says to the prosecutor, Madam Prosecutor, Madam State's Attorney, whatever, it's not here. Oh, well, there must be a mistake. Then he said, Your Honor, back when this happened in 2015, the state had filled out the wrong forms, and the state's attorney's butting in going, that's a lie, that didn't happen. And so the judge said, we're going to pass this matter. State's attorney, go get the records. So when she came back, she started her presentation like this. Your Honor, I need to correct the record. In other words, he's right. We had the wrong forms. And then it comes out to the charges against the man were never dismissed or resolved on the record at any time that we know of in any court, like the man said.
Well, the issue's a little bit outstanding, but let me tell you why.
Judge is going to come back and address the issue.
Let me tell you why that's important, because in Connecticut, when the prosecutor declines to prosecute or nollies a case, the defendant has a right to move for dismissal. And so if you're nolling things off the record outside the presence of the defendant, he never gets the chance to move for dismissal. But let's get back to the subject at hand with David.
So now let's go back to David.
Right.
Deer Park is the home of the Shell audit, correct?
Correct.
And Shell has a lot of pull down there in Texas.
Shell has a lot of pull in Texas, yes, but in Deer Park, they own that city.
Okay. And you kind of exposed their inaccuracies in writing reports.
Well, they hire off-duty police officers, and basically what those police officers have to do, and I've heard this from officers who work there at any given point, is if they are unhappy with an employee or somebody, and they tell these officers, lock them up for something, those officers either fabricate some kind of charge or they lose their job. And, these guys, these officers are getting paid $80 an hour to work there. They don't want to screw that up. The crooked cops. Now, there are plenty that have quit or been fired from there because they would do that. And then, they hire off-duty Deer Park police officers and off-duty Harris County Sheriff's deputies. It's conflict of interest for Deer Park PD. They should not have off-duty officers working in that plant because it gives Shell influence within the police department. And this is something we're going to fight. This is something that's going to get fought.
Right. Now, we received the call while you were on the phone. Master Control just walked out the question to me. And you don't have to answer it because I'm going to have a comment about it.
Right.
Why did David go back and sit with the police afterwards?
After what?
You went in and you actually sat down with law enforcement and had a discussion with them on camera. It was recorded. With was it the Deer Park Police Department?
Okay, I know what you're talking about now. So that video, I recorded that interview, and I handed it off to my attorney in California, my civil attorney in California, and that attorney has released that video.
Without your authorization.
Correct, without my authorization. So they misled me on what they wanted to talk about. That was an ambush. I was caught completely off guard. They wanted to speak to me about my youngest daughter, not my youngest daughter, but one of my younger daughters that at one point had been placed for adoption. I had her with somebody outside of my marriage, and that person couldn't take care of her, and at the time that this all got funky, I could not take her myself. And so she asked me to allow her to be adopted by a family that she had been in foster care with, and at her behest, I agreed to do it. And they called me and said they had information from her and wanted to chat with me about her and an old case that had come up with her. That case had been resolved. I had taken a polygraph and passed, and other details that I'm not going to go into here. But the case was resolved and was determined to be unfounded by both Child Protective Services and the Pasadena Police Department. So I went in for that, and then they hit me with all this other stuff. And, a good portion of it, if you know anything about interrogation techniques, a good portion of it was just to keep me off balance. But they had done a lot of research. They had contacted an old girlfriend, just digging. And all of this for a case they had no jurisdiction in. Nothing has ever happened in Deer Park, in the city of Houston. And yet, Deer Park, I guess they don't have any crime in Deer Park. But, they wanted to do the digging. So to answer the question, I don't know if I answered it properly or not, but to answer the question is, I went there for one thing and got hit with something else.
Okay, now here's my comment. You ready?
Sure.
I know from personal experience how a person who doesn't feel they've done anything wrong wants an opportunity to explain to law enforcement the elements of I didn't do it, the elements of it didn't happen, the elements of whatever this is, it's 20 years old, it was investigated, I took a polygraph, no charges were brought 20 years ago, what are we talking about it today for? And I know that you did that. I today
Exactly what I did.
I today would say to you, if you had said to me, they want to talk to me, I'd say, tell them to go pound sand. Leave it alone. Don't even go there. But it's out there, and I will tell you, J.C. Playford did a clip in support of David Warden that has received a lot of hits and a lot of comments. And a lot of the comments are running in your favor. Yes, I'm sure there's comments from people who are going to try and interfere with your ability to maintain a relationship with YouTube. They're going to do everything in their power to try and shut you down.
Well, what does that mean, David? Have there been indications that YouTube may get involved or shut you down? Or are you just saying as a possibility? There have?
Yes, I've been in touch with YouTube, and they are getting a lot of hate mail about me, and basically the trolls who have shut down my fundraiser and some other stuff. They're trying to get my channel shut down as well. This is all between the government and the trolls who just like to do what they do. It's all about shutting me up and shutting me down. And anybody that supports that doesn't support what we're doing. It's that simple. I'm good at what I do, and the government hates that. Crooked cops hate that. And so anything they can do to shut me up and shut me down, they're going to do. This case is a perfect example. This case is not going to fly in court. It was already investigated and rejected at the time it occurred. Now, here we are 20 years later, okay? Nothing has changed, and yet they think
but
In and of itself, that should tell you something.
but the damage, at least partially,
Let me-
has been done.
Let me explain.
The public, that's what it's about. They know they're not going to get a conviction on this. They know there's not going to be any prosecution. But the public damage is what they were after.
They're attempting to try you in the court of public opinion.
Absolutely.
Now,
the allegations that they brought are probably the worst possible allegations they could bring. People should have realized right off the bat that something was wrong, and a lot of people did. I'm forgetting to mention that tons and tons of people have helped me with this and donated and stepped up to give me words of wisdom and encouragement and I don't want to neglect those people because they have sustained me through this, but the negativity from the people in my own community who should know better, people who know how this system works, those people, I am shocked at how many of them have turned. I'm just shocked.
Go ahead.
On food shows, they talk about how important presentation is. And I think that's what we're talking about right now, how you present something. We were involved in a case a couple months ago. Well, it's probably been about a month and a half at this point, where a man, it was on videotape from a gas station in Hartford, where a man was photographed or recorded picking up a woman and putting her in a car. Now, he was charged with kidnapping, and the way they reported it on the news made you think that a crazy man, is just running around Hartford picking up women and putting them in cars, right?
Right.
Well, what they failed to report, and not that it makes it okay, but you got to put it in context a little bit, the victim, complainant, never wanted to prosecute. They were married, and it was an argument. Now, not that puts it, you can make all the arguments you want about domestic violence and everything, but they didn't present it in that light. They presented it in a light where there's a man running around Hartford just picking up women off the street at random, which is a completely different scenario, and people react completely different to that scenario than the real scenario.
Well, and let me say something else that the people on the other side of the camera need to understand. Let's assume that this is a trial, and there's 1.2 million jurors, and 600,000 or 50% of the jury pool says not guilty, and 50% of the jury pool says guilty. I believe that a guilty verdict has to come back as unanimous to convict.
Mm-hmm.
And
Duke
has to
stop.
come back as unanimous to convict. And I don't think that this case is ever going to come back unanimous unless you have a way of picking your jurors that you know what they're going to do ahead of time. But David, I just want to let you know something. When I got a call from somebody recently, I asked the question, knowing that you had explained to me your background when we first met, when I first decided to issue a set of press credentials to you, that I supported News Now San Diego, or News Now Houston. I said, before you start, do we have anything that occurred within the last 5 or 10 years? And the person had to say to me, no, I'm going back to 1985 and whatever. And I said, well, I'm not going back that far. I'm not going back that far.
A lot of people, that's all they've got. They're desperate for something, and so they have to dig back. There's nothing hidden about my past. It never has been. And there's a lot of people that go around saying, well, I heard this or I heard that, and attributing things to me having been that I said about this that I never said, because I don't go into it. It's not relevant. It has nothing to do with what we do today. And there are people in the community that are saying, well, you shouldn't be doing this because of that, because then people associate me with you. And here's what I say about that: who is better to be be out there fighting for our rights than somebody who's been denied their rights.
Exactly.
Activists in a lot of cases aren't activists by a matter of choice. They're driven to it.
Yes.
They're forced to it. I'll give you a good example. C.J. Grisham is an activist here in Texas for Open Carry Texas. And he's an activist because he was falsely accused and harassed by a police department. Before that, he wasn't an activist. They created him. And that's what's occurred with me. They created me. I wasn't made in a vacuum. Bad cops created me.
You reach a point, David, and I can attest to the fact that J.C. Playford was running around capturing breaking news events with a palm-corder type camcorder, and he was passing his video off to news desks in San Diego, and he began to show things that law enforcement didn't want him to see, didn't want the public to see. And JC kept doing it. And then all of a sudden, how do we shut this man down? How do we get this man away from the scene? Or JC's on the scene, everybody stand up and pay attention. JC's here. Well, what happened was JC reached the breaking point where he made in his mind, as I've made in my mind in the past, this thing where, and there's a video out there of a New Britain police sergeant taking my camera and tripod and walking away with it and telling me to move or I'd be arrested. My feet don't know how to move anymore. I just can't do it anymore. You want to arrest me, but I can't move anymore. And that's what I define as the First Amendment activist saying, I've had enough. It may not have been you that caused this, but you're going to hear from me. I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. You want to arrest me? Let's go find a judge.
Well,
Take me away.
I want to follow up on what David said about how people become activists.
Right.
Because I have people walk into my office
All the time,
especially firearms owners with all the new laws, and they say, they've been arrested for something, even if it's because the fact that they own a firearm and they, are maybe asking too many questions. People say they're in fear for their safety or whatever it is. And these people say, I used to believe everything I read in the paper. When somebody got arrested, I would take it as a fact that they were guilty because they had been arrested. But now that I've been arrested and I know how the newspaper skews things and how the media skews things, I will never look at things the same way again when I hear that somebody's been arrested. And the way I connect that to what David said was, things happen to you when you become an activist. And then when you become an activist, to counter what you're doing, they accuse you of being biased because you have a history of something happening to you. But if you don't have a history of something happening to you, then you're probably not going to become an activist, and they're probably not going to say things about you because you're not an activist. So it is quite a vicious cycle. There's no doubt about it.
And because we are going out to News Now Houston, some of your subscribers, followers, supporters, and detractors may not have been aware of Summary Judgment Talk Show. Mm-hmm. But there is a video clip, and I'm going to take and put it up on your site.
Yes.
It's the arrest of Sean Foran in Naugatuck, Connecticut, where they're coming out with all kinds of reasons to arrest her that aren't founded in the law. That video clip has received 149,000 views and has comments underneath it, because what I did is I showed video clips of the arrest, what the officers were saying, then I actually scrolled the law so that the public could read the law, read the decisions, read the police report, read what was said, and it's amazing that the public gets it. with Sean Ford.
Right, and I am working on, because we bore the expense at my office of ordering the transcript of that hearing in that case, and I'm working on posting the transcript so people can actually read the testimony of these officers when they were put under oath at the motion to suppress. So, David, do you have any final words for us? Because we're getting other calls, and I want to take those calls because I have a feeling they're about you.
I'm sure they are. You're going to get, like I said, you're going to get a lot of trolls calling in. But, I noticed in the comment section, a lot of people don't know who Ed is. And Ed is a First Amendment proponent and Second Amendment proponent going back well into the 70s. He was a citizen journalist before that term was even coined. And for people in the community that have been around the community for a while, basically he's a legend. Everybody's heard of me because of YouTube, and yet very few have heard of Ed. And he has done more in the fight for First Amendment and Second Amendment rights than anybody else I know.
Well, I'm going to show you something.
Yeah, you said he went back to the 70s. I have a picture that I think almost goes back that
90.
far. Yeah, where he was on the cover of Photographer News magazine, and that's Hartford in the background. And, we just concluded a lawsuit against Hartford for still trying to prevent Ed from record police activity just a year or two ago. So he has definitely not stopped and is still going strong, David. So thank you for making that introduction for Ed. For the firearms advocates out there, Ed is also the Ed Peruta of Peruta v. California, which was a case in the Ninth Circuit out in California where Ed sued the city of San Diego, the county of San Diego for denying him a pistol permit. He claimed that the Second Amendment guaranteed his right to protect himself outside the home because at that point the Supreme Court had ruled that the Second Amendment applied inside the home to protect rights. And that case was funded by the NRA. You can look it up. It's all over the internet by Chuck Michelle and Associates out there in Long Beach, California. And the Supreme Court conferenced it a number of times, but never granted cert. So that issue is still out there, outstanding. But we attended a presentation by a Yale Law School professor a couple weeks ago, Akil Amar, and I said to him, in the election for President Trump back in 2016, how important do you think the issue was of the replacement of Justice Scalia on the Supreme Court? In other words, when people were deciding whether to vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, was the issue of the direction in which the Supreme Court would go as a result of who was elected an important issue in the campaign? And he said, yes, it was a very important issue in the campaign. And I said to him afterwards, well, Ed's case was pending at that time about firearms rights. How important do you think it was, Peruta v. California, where people were looking at that, wondering which way it would go depending on who was appointed to the Supreme Court, because whether it was Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? And we actually have Akil.
He gave me a copy of his book. And he actually signed in the cover that Ed Peruta helped Donald Trump get elected.
That's right,
and I'm very proud of that fact.
But
David, I appreciate.
I am non-political. Okay, let me say this because I'm going to get some heat for this. I am non-political. I don't support any political party. Okay, I vote for candidates based on who they are and what they represent.
Well, you know what? We go even further than that, I would say, because, should we say it?
Go ahead.
No, we'll say it. We've said it before on the show. Ed and I, at the beginning of 2016, were both Democrats, correct?
I may have switched before that.
Well, I switched in 2016, particularly and specifically to vote for Donald Trump.
I wanted somebody who wasn't going to toe the company line.
Yep. So we're there with you, David. Definitely.
But David, I appreciate your compliments. You're absolutely correct. I cherish the rights given to us or acknowledged in the First Amendment, and I cherish.
Let's correct it. There are not rights given to us in the First
Amendment.
Acknowledged and guaranteed and shall not be infringed. Okay, let's not get in trouble about that again.
I am a person who believes in the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, and the Fifth Amendment. And I want to say right now, I'm going to say it again, because I don't know how many of your News Now Houston people are watching this. I support David Warden and what he does with News Now Houston.
Well, thank you, Ed.
And thank you,
And I
David.
put my money where my mouth was by making a PayPal donation to your fundraiser.
Yes, you did.
So what we're going to do next, David, is we're going to queue up I think it's about a 5-minute video that JC did about your case, and we're going to play that for everybody, okay?
All right, thanks. I'll talk to you guys again soon.
Have
All
a
right.
wonderful weekend.
I think it's our good fortune to have access to News Now Houston subscribers to get our message out about the topics that we talk about. Because we don't just talk about issues in Connecticut. We'll talk about issues in Southern California. We'll talk about issues in Houston. We'll talk about issues, Joe, in Chicago. We'll talk about issues if somebody's got a problem and they don't have a place to vent and they've got their facts, then as far as I'm concerned, you can call in on a Saturday and you can vent.
Now, while we're waiting for JC's video to be queued up, let me just cover one of the more limited subject matters that was on our list of things to do.
Yep.
And you and I were watching the news this week, and there was a story. I didn't print it out, so if I get the ages wrong or anything, I acknowledge that. But there were two sisters, and I believe they were 6 and 8 years old, live in Humboldt County, California. They wander. Oh, should we take? Let's take a call. Come on.
Okay, which one?
I don't know. I guess one, maybe. Yeah. Take one, Ed.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Summary judgment.
Hi, I've got a few questions.
Well, first of all, no last name. What's your first name?
My name is David,
David, where are you calling from?
California.
And where are you watching this? On what YouTube channel?
News Now Houston.
Okay, go ahead.
So I like to say I first started watching News Now Houston about a year and a half ago. I love his videos. He does a really great job at speaking and communicating. However, I feel a little disappointed that he did lie. My biggest problem with him is that anyone who doesn't support him, he calls a troll. That's just pure manipulation, right? To get all of his other fans to agree with him, in almost like manipulating everyone to kind of block out the trolls, basically block out what's really going on. And so I'm disappointed that you guys are supporting him. And you're not mentioning the fact that he's already convicted of serially raping women at gunpoint. So there seems to be a pattern here where he continuously commits these crimes and then manipulates people into liking him, obviously growing his channel.
Okay, Dave, let me ask you a question. And I'm going to use your words if I can remember them. Do you think that he's continuing that pattern? Serial raping women at gunpoint?
Let me put it this way. His alleged crime that he's currently allegedly committed, right, that he's accused of,
Yeah.
I've rarely heard of children lying about their parent, their father committing these crimes. This is not something that's easy for a child to come out and say, right, to the public, right, because this is their father, this is the person that raised them. This is not an easy thing to do, and I feel like anyone who's attacking his children for saying this, they're evil, right, and they're supporting evil. And while I understand that he hasn't been convicted of this crime,
like I said, like children don't come out and say these things because it's, and I'm sure you understand this as a lawyer, this is not something that's easy for a child to do. And in fact, in most cases, children don't come out and say anything, and they live with this till their death. All right? So I know somebody who occurred to, and it's definitely not something that's easy to talk about. So I definitely have to side with his children on this one, as you say in the court of public opinion. And this is not for me to do because I did like David, right? Earl, I should say, because this first time, Earl. I did support him, but I no longer support him.
All right. Well,
And well, let me comment,
go ahead.
David, and that's why we're doing the show, for people to be able to call in, and we thank you for your call, stating your position. Ed and I are not here to argue the case. That's not
Nope.
something we're going to do or try to change anybody's mind or convince anybody of anything. And so I just want to thank you for calling in and giving your point of view, because this is a difficult area to talk about for everybody.
And I understand this. And I'm not, and I didn't really mean to go into detail about what, the alleged crime and whatnot. My biggest issue is the fact that he calls anyone who doesn't support him a troll. And actually, he said this on air, on your show. He said, which I found really unfounded, he said, like, anyone who doesn't support him is a troll who's against the movement. And not everyone who doesn't support him is against the movement. They just don't support him for his lying, especially his lying about his previous conviction.
Yeah, I mean, Ed and I have disagreements on this show about that all the time, because I do not like to call people names. I don't, and because to me, you discuss what the people are doing, and you don't call a name to classify it. And so from that perspective, I agree with you. I know sometimes Ed gets upset and he will do the same thing and, call, everybody this or everybody that. And I think it comes out of a sense of defensiveness and frustration, which, a lot of us feel at times. But I can side definitely with you on that I am not a big fan of calling people names. Like sometimes people will say, oh, all those Democrats in Congress are this, or all those people over there are this. No, I try not to do that. I mean, I'm not perfect. Maybe I do sometimes, but I definitely try not to do that, and that's not a direction I like going. So that's a good point. Fair point.
I want some time with David before he goes.
Okay.
David,
Yeah.
I believe, first of all, I need to ask a question. Up until you were advised or became aware of something in David Warden's past, we're not going to talk about what it is, how serious it was, how bad it was, or whatever. Up until that time, did you support what David Warden was doing?
Yeah,
Okay.
I love this video. I waited, like anytime I saw this video come up, I was excited, to watch.
Okay, now, do you believe that David Warden may be making a mistake labeling everybody who's criticizing him or what he does today based on something that occurred 20 years ago, a troll?
I believe not only is he making a mistake, but he's using it intentionally to manipulate individuals.
Okay. David Warden is probably watching this right now. And as one human being to another, I would say to David Warden, the appropriate answer would be this. Everybody is going to be entitled to their beliefs and their opinions based on the information that they have. The question is, and I've said this, there's people that like me, Dave, and there's people that hate me because of what I say and what I do and my opinions on various topics. There's people that actually hate me. I accept that. We can't have a president win the election without half the country voting against them. So all I'm saying is this. I will tend to agree with you that David should probably not cast his net so wide to say that everyone is a troll. There are some people that are probably legitimately concerned about the allegations that are now coming forward. But we should really give David the benefit of the doubt of being innocent until proven guilty. And you're right. I think that he needs to just keep doing what he's doing and trying to give people an honest look at government and law enforcement. And I would only hope that over a period of time, you may continue to watch News Now Houston or Summary Judgment or News Now San Diego and support the people that are doing what we're doing.
Thank you again so much, David. And we're gonna have other people weigh in and see what they have to say. Okay?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much.
Oh,
And thank you for calling. And please stop back again next Saturday or any Saturday and subscribe to Summary Judgment Talk Show.
Okay, next call. Bye, David. Hi, this is Summary Judgment. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thanks. Before I get into my main point, this is the first time I've watched your show. This is CJ out of Texas.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
Is this Ed Peruta? Is he the gentleman that's talking?
Yes.
Ed, I'm a gun rights activist here in Texas, so I just want to say thank you for all that you do.
Well, that's great, CJ, because I know somebody else had called in and was wondering who Ed Peruta was. And Ed Peruta is a lot of things, but foremost, at least in the past, 8 or 9 years, he's been known for that case that almost made it to the Supreme Court and paved the way for some cases to follow, we hope.
No, Ed, you're going to become the Heller, the McDonald. That's where you fit up there.
Yeah.
Well, I had my shot and I didn't make it to the top. But let me just.
But you affected an election.
I did. Let me say something to you, just so you understand. When I filed my lawsuit against San Diego, I did not do it to change the laws in the country. I did it to try and get a permit to protect myself and my family because of certain things that were happening in my lifestyle. And
meaning that you drove an RV. We don't want people to think.
I was in an RV in very remote areas of the country in California, and I shoot television news. I go to homicides when the body's laying in the middle of the road and the cops aren't even there yet, and the bad guy's still in the crowd. You know, I get there sometimes before the police do. What I'm trying to say... Go ahead.
People get there before the police do.
Yeah.
That makes you a suspect.
Yeah, that makes me a suspect. But I will tell you this. I am a supporter of holding government officials accountable. I believe that every government agency should be transparent. When a citizen asks a valid question, they're entitled to a reasonable answer. When they have an issue out on the street with a government employee, the supervisors or the agencies they work for should address them properly. And that is not happening in this country.
Well, CJ, before you go, I just want to say, if you or anybody you know down there in Texas happens to come to Connecticut, be careful, because I've represented a gentleman from Texas who was up here doing some construction work, and the police were called for something that had nothing to do with him, and they happened to see a handgun in his truck, and he was arrested for a couple serious charges. And he said, I don't understand how having a handgun in your truck, it's not on you or anything else, it can bring these kind of charges, but it does. And so for anybody coming from Texas to Connecticut, be sure and check the gun laws thoroughly if you plan on being in possession of any firearms.
CJ, I'm going to leave you with a comment, and this is going to probably sound funny in 2019 when I was...
did want to talk about the David thing. I did.
Okay. Oh, good. Oh, good. Okay.
We'll talk about that. But when I first filed my lawsuit and I was approached by Chuck Michelle out of Long Beach, California, and I was offered the support of the NRA and the California Rifle and Pistol Association in the lawsuit. They asked me to keep my mouth shut. In other words, don't say anything. And I said to them at the time, I said, okay, I'll keep my mouth shut about this case in California, but you will not shut me up back in Connecticut when I do my summary judgment talk show or I'm quoted in the newspaper about other topics. I'm not going to keep my mouth shut because it would have been 10 years of saying nothing. And this is to me like a therapy session. So go ahead, talk about David.
So I wanted to kind of address what the previous caller had said. And on one hand, I'll agree that just because someone disagrees with you, you shouldn't call them a troll. The problem that David has, and I think that what David is responding to, is these people aren't just disagreeing with him. They are convicting him. These people are
That's
out
right.
there spreading, in many cases, outright blatant lies. Many of them are YouTubers who are trying to get their subscriber count above 50. And I think that's who he's mostly, from what I've seen, that's who he's talking about when he talks about trolls. I wholeheartedly support calling people names who deserve those names. But
I do too. I do too. She doesn't.
If David's saying everyone that disagrees with him or is leery about this or not giving him the benefit of the doubt trolls, then that might be counterproductive. But I'll say this. Anyone that is not giving David the benefit of the doubt, and they're out there also claiming to be a First Amendment auditor or claiming to hold government accountable or claiming that they believe in the Constitution, well, then they're lying. They're not only trolls, but they're lying trolls because they don't believe in the Constitution. And sometimes it's very difficult to want to give due process to people who are accused of very heinous crimes. And sexual assault, especially sexual assault of a minor, is a heinous crime. But David and everyone else deserves due process. You can even go under the assumption, and as somebody who's been falsely convicted, falsely accused, and lied about in court of a crime I did not commit, it wasn't a violent crime, it was just an interference crime. But someone who has seen and dealt with the lies of the police, the lies of the prosecutor, the lies of the judges, and how the entire system works, and how jurors have come up to me and said, I felt like I had no choice. I didn't think you were guilty, but I didn't feel like I had a choice but to say that you were guilty because of the way the judge put out the
jury instructions.
The jury instructions. And so anybody that has never been through that system, and just because, oh, well, so-and-so, he's convicted once, so he's always convicted. Well, I guess I'm always going to be guilty of interference then, because I was once convicted of interference. So what I have done and what I'm trying to get people to do, but this is why I think David is right. There are so many trolls out there. Because I put out a video saying that, look, let's give David due process. Let the courts figure this out. And then convict him or acquit him. And yes, are these charges disgusting? Child sexual assault or sexual assault of a minor is the most disgusting crime I can think of next to abortion. And me personally. And so, but yet I also believe that regardless of my feelings about the charges themselves, David and everybody accused of a crime deserves due process. Now, when doesn't a person get due process? When you see a video of some guy raping a woman, or you see a video of some guy shooting another man, or you see, when it's on film and the evidence is a preponderance before you even get to court, yeah, that's different. But when you've got a 22-year-old allegation, well, but CJ, what about, these are his kids? Do a Google search on daughter lies about rape. These cases are everywhere. Just because it's his daughters doesn't mean that it's automatically true. And so all I'm saying is don't convict David. Don't even acquit David. Don't go out there, and those people that are going out there saying, oh, he's innocent, no doubt, well, they're wrong too. He's not innocent and he's not guilty, but he is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Very articulate, CJ. Thank you so much. Do you want to give the information where somebody can look at your video if they want to go there?
Well, it's on my CJ Grisham channel, and
Okay.
I got the same trolls. Yes, I say it. The same despicable trolls that are on David's or on my video. Everyone's trying to convict him with lies. Everyone's trying to say he's a multiple. That he's been convicted of multiple sexual assaults. There's one. That's it. And all these people are making up nothing but conjecture because I've seen all the documents. They've seen all the documents. They say, oh, you haven't seen all the documents. Okay, well, send them to me. They send them to me. It's the exact same documents I've seen. The case specifics of that one case are sealed. But yet everyone's going around saying they know what the case is. And so there's one case and a lot of lies out there. And I'm not talking about what David has told me. I'm talking about what I've seen. And if people want to change my mind, not that my mind cares, I'm not anybody special, then again, on CJ Grisham, I've got my email address underneath that video about News Now Houston. Then you can send me your evidence of supposedly how he shoved handguns into vaginas and stuff like that. And I apologize for the description, but that's what these people are trying to say. But there's absolutely no proof of this.
I need to say something. It is March of 2019. There was recently an allegation in Chicago, Illinois, by a television or series star about being assaulted.
Jussie Smollett.
And it all fell apart based on the facts and the evidence that was gathered by law enforcement. We're all aware of that, are we not?
Yes.
Okay. I will tell you, and this has nothing I don't know anything about the intricate facts that everybody's claiming occurred with David Warden. But I'll go like this. When a person, male or female, makes an allegation, in this case it could have been a minor, and they tell a story that blows up and has all kinds of repercussions to it, it's kind of difficult even 20 years later for that person to change their story and say, well, it wasn't all true. It's hard for a person who claimed to have been the victim to recant a story that caused all of everything afterwards. I don't know the facts. I don't think anybody will ever know the facts, but there are some people that I guess would know whether it happened or not. That's David and the alleged victims. And society will never give a fair trial to anyone, because how many times have we been aware of the fact that facts that the public knows are never presented to the jury because of motions to suppress, and that doesn't have anything to do with it. Now, you got convicted of interfering?
Yes.
What year did you get convicted?
2013.
Well, I got convicted in 1989-90 of interfering with a police officer.
Are you familiar with J.C. Playford, CJ?
I am not, but I'm going to write that down.
Yep, J.C. Playford is a videographer, and he has the YouTube site News Now San Diego, and he knows David Warden. They do the same kind of thing, except J.C. Playford focuses on mainly police activity. Would you characterize it that way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and J.C. Playford, he was arrested 4 times for interfering. I always say when somebody's only arrested for interfering, there's something wrong, because why isn't there another charge? Like, what were they interfering with? What was going on? What caused it? So anyway, interfering is a really strange charge to have by itself. You know something's going on when somebody's only charged with interfering.
I need to say something.
So J.C. was arrested 4 times for it. He was acquitted once. If they combined two of them, and it was a hung jury, so he
Right.
ended up pleading guilty to disorderly conduct because the judge said if you don't, you get convicted, you're going to jail for 2 years.
780 days.
And then the other one, he was convicted. Now, this is the case we have in the Ninth Circuit right now. We're trying to claim, or we are claiming, that JC was arrested in retaliation for his exercise of First Amendment rights. And the issue, we're waiting for a Supreme Court opinion, so the Ninth Circuit knows what to do, is whether, if there's probable cause for your arrest, can you still claim retaliation based on First Amendment rights, or does that probable cause make everything the police did in that
The
case
conviction does not change the fact of the initial contact and the original reason why J.C. Playford was quote unquote interfering by not leaving.
So I just wanted to add that in because we're very familiar with it.
But I want to say something, David, while you're on the phone.
No,
what
CJ,
were you? I'm sorry, CJ. What was the allegation what did you do to be called interfering?
Well, if you want to talk about it, you don't have to talk
No,
about
go
it.
ahead.
No, we just,
No, it's fine. I've been arrested 3 times for interference. So every time I get arrested, they either add interference or resisting arrest. And that's because when a police officer is violating his oath, duty, and authority, I will always resist bad cops. And I will
Right.
always interfere with unlawful actions of a police officer. So the first time, the one that I was convicted on, a police officer walked up and tried to disarm me without saying a word. He just walked up to me while I was hiking, minding my own business, tried to disarm me. I didn't let him disarm me, at least immediately, because I put my hands on the gun. I'm a combat veteran. You don't just grab a guy's gun, especially a combat veteran. And that act of putting my hand on the gun is what was, quote, interference. The second time they tried to arrest me for speaking. They tried to tell me I could not be on Capitol grounds where I had a right to be. And as they were trying to handcuff me, I did not let them handcuff me immediately because I was doing nothing wrong. That was interference. So I kind of pushed back on that. And then the third time, they were, again, trying to tell me to leave a public place where I had a right to be with a firearm I was legally carrying. And the police officer was trying to grab me, and I was backing up so he could not grab me, and ended up getting tased and got charged with interference and other crimes there. Actually, in that crime, I also got charged with felony assault on a peace officer, which was completely laughable. When I heard that at magistrate, I thought, what, did I land on his foot or something?
All right, so let me see if I can vent a little bit here. And I've said this to J.C. Playford. I've said it to Dave Warden. And I've said it to other people who have contacted me who either have or plan on having a News Now Something YouTube channel. I have never done a First Amendment audit. I have never gone out, either carrying a firearm openly, looking to excite a police officer into making a mistake and hassling me so I can hassle back, get arrested, and do whatever. I've never done that.
But you have carried openly.
Oh, I carry openly all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of police officers. There's a lot of police officers that don't know the law. But let me say this. I am not a proponent or a supporter of First Amendment audits. I'm not. I am Ed Peruta. I started, founded, and own American News and Information Services. And just so everybody knows, that's ANUS for short. Okay? No, I had a police officer, Joe Dwyer.
Don't encourage him.
I had a police officer in Hartford named Joe Dwyer tell me one night at 2 o'clock in the morning when a guy drove his car through the living room wall into his house that I was an asshole and full of shit. So I called my company ANUS. And that's a true story. Is how ANUS came about. Now, what I'm saying to you is this: I listen to police scanners and receive phone calls from people about breaking news events. I respond to the scene. I have a tendency to not cross a yellow tape unless I'm authorized to cross it. I don't. I stand where the crowd is standing. So I'm exercising my right with other members of the public, and I begin to video record. And then the police officer doesn't do anything with the people standing around me with no camera, comes up to me and says, "You're going to have to move." And I say, "Why? Because I got a camera? Why can't I record what everybody's looking at with their eyes?" And my confrontations with law enforcement have always been in the scenario. For example, I go to a fire. They put up a yellow tape. I go to a officer of the fire department and say, "Chief," or "Deputy Chief," or "Captain," or "Lieutenant." "Lieutenant, I'm Ed Pruitt of American News. I'm going to be working on your fire ground. Do you have any objections?" They say, "No, just stay out of our way." I said, "Okay, I've been doing this for 40 years. I know how to do it." I start walking around the fire apparatus, shooting the door, shooting the street sign as a locator shot, shooting the flames coming out of the top of the house, and a policeman comes up and says, "You have to move." And I say, "Officer, fire owns this ground. Fire has given me permission to be here. Get away from me."
Okay.
Now, First Amendment audits, I understand them. What they're doing is they're exposing officers who have not been properly trained. It is a fad now for people to do it. Officers are paranoid about cameras because they can't write their report and say whatever they want to say because it doesn't match the video either that they have from their body cameras or that people are recording on cell phones. It doesn't match up.
Yeah, but you know what? Go ahead, CJ.
Well, I was going to say, I don't want to stay on the whole time. I want
Okay.
to kind of bookend my two David comments here. And the first is, especially your previous caller, came on here and said that he has multiple times been convicted of sexual assault. He's got one from 30 plus years ago. That's it. Just one. So people who are out there lying about David's convictions to push whatever their agenda is, which is David hate, I don't know what it is. So that's the first thing. This is a 30-plus-year-old conviction that has never been repeated. The allegations today, not the facts, the allegations today are 22 years old. And then I'll just leave with, we either believe in the Constitution or we don't. We either believe in individual liberty or we don't.
Thank you.
And part of that individual liberty is recognizing that people are innocent until proven guilty. And I'll clear the phone line for you, and I appreciate all y'all are doing. I'm going to keep listening.
CJ, before you go, I want you to spell your YouTube channel. CJ, spell Griffin.
Grisham.
Well, it's the channel is youtube.com/CHCKNHAWK. That's Chicken Hawk. It's like Henry the Chicken Hawk from the Foghorn Leghorn cartoon.
Got it.
I was given that name in basic training because I was the smallest guy in the platoon, and I ended up beating up the biggest guy in the platoon on pugil sticks. And so it's like Henry the Chicken Hawk. Ah, I'm a chicken
What
hawk.
branch of the service were you
That's
in?
pretty good.
Army.
Well, I was in the Marines, right?
Hoorah.
Hoorah.
Thank you for your service.
And no, thank you for your service. I mean, you're younger than I am, I think. I'm 70. But, my claim to fame is that the founder of Federal Express, Fred Smith, was my lieutenant in combat.
Awesome.
Take care, CJ. Thanks for calling. Bye.
Stay safe, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, it's Chicken Hawk with no vowels in chicken, so no I or E in chicken.
CHCKHNHAWK at YouTube, on YouTube.
Yes.
I'm going to make sure there's a link on AMNewsNetwork.com to your YouTube account.
Okay.
And I'm not here to beg for subs. I mean, I don't monetize. I don't care if people watch me or not. I'm just
No, I get that.
Video where I'm trying to give David his due process. I don't support him. I don't oppose him. I support his rights.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So, interestingly enough, we've talked about this whole First Amendment issue and how that's not something that you do. When I'm engaged in, either my business or being with you in your American News capacity, I mean, I think it's my personality not to be confrontational until I'm confronted.
Then you're very confrontational.
Then I'm very confrontational. But on the other hand, when I was talking to David Warden, I kind of got on a roll there, and I really do think what he does has impacted the whole explosion of body cam for officers. Because why else would they do that but for the civilian having information that the officer doesn't have? There was one case that I did where the police interviewed my client, which is pretty unusual, but in this case it was an exception to the rule. And I recorded the interview with consent. It was obvious I was recording it. I put my recorder down, and I said it's not going to take place unless I record it. And the police did not record it. And so it was a strange position where I had a recording of the client's interview and the police did not. And the prosecutor did not even become aware of this until the police officer was ready to go on the stand. And the police officer expressed, I believe, to the prosecutor that he was worried that he was going to testify under oath. And I had a recording of what actually happened at the interview, and he didn't. So I think he was worried that his testimony might not match up to the recording that I had.
Right.
And so that's just, police officers do not want you to have a verifiable record when they don't. So I do think that these First Amendment audits have affected body cam, dash cam, whatever, all the different kinds of recording mechanisms that officers have. And it's funny, when you look at the beginning of revolutions, it's always a different kind of personality that starts the revolution then carries it forward once the movement begins.
Sam Adams.
Yeah, and once the movement begins and it becomes kind of accepted mainstream that, yes, we do need to record police officers. It does come in handy. It can be used in criminal trials. It can be used in civil matters. Once that becomes accepted by the general public, then they turn around and they look at the people who began the revolution and they say, those people are crazy. What are they doing? They don't need to act that way. Well, you forget, at a particular point in time, they did need to act that way to get the movement going. And so that makes me look at what David Warden does in a different perspective.
Fact. Not all Americans in the colonies wanted to separate from England. Fact. Sam Adams was a violent radical against England.
We have him in our front window too. Don't we?
Fact, yes.
Yeah.
Fact. George Washington was opposed to a revolution and breaking away from England, but once it started, look what happened. Okay? Now,
we're going to go to the video.
Before we go to the video of JC.
Okay.
I told someone.
We're going to get him live. J.C. Playford, you're calling.
We're going to see if he's there.
Mm-hmm.
J.C. Playford?
Yes, sir.
News Now San Diego?
Yes, sir.
Currently in St. Johns County, Florida?
Yeah.
Have you been listening?
No.
No?
No, I've been working.
Good.
Well, then I'm going to hang up on your ass.
Why? Where we got going?
No, well, we've talked to Dave Warden. We've talked
We
to
talked to who?
News Now Houston.
Yeah.
Like, Houston, we have a problem? Okay.
Right.
You did a video in support of Dave Warden.
Right.
How many hits has it got the last time you watched it?
God, I mean, there were thousands of hits on it.
Okay. JC, go back to work and supporting yourself, because we're going to play your video clip right now.
Oh, well, I'm just working on the house, so I'll turn it on.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay,
JC.
well, you know the phone number. It's up on the screen.
Okay.
Okay, bye. See, he's
so
JC is such a laid-back person. He's not even watching. He's going, I probably thought we were on at noon.
So we're going to sit here and talk until the video just comes on. Yeah. So
It's
whenever
just
it's
gonna
ready,
pop on,
whenever it's ready, let it go. Okay, here
We're
it
ready.
comes.
Here's J.C. Playford in his clip about David Warden, News Now Houston.
Most of you know who I am. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is J.C. Playford. I work with American News and Information Services. I'm the guy behind News Now San Diego and pretty much the News Nows that are running around the country on YouTube. Through my years of doing this, I've learned one thing, that each and every one of us are a target. If you're doing anything like we are, as far as holding government accountable, reporting what's going on in your neighborhood, and just the basic caring about your society that we all do, there's one thing we all know, that we have a target on our backs, each and every one of us. There's a lot of things that have come out about News Now Houston. Okay? Well, guess what, folks? I've been convicted of crimes that I haven't committed because I have a target on my back. And that's why we're in the federal courts and doing the things we're doing. News Now Houston years back was convicted of a crime. Okay? If he did that, I don't know. I wasn't there. But I do know this, it was long enough back to where he did his time. He went to jail. He paid his price to society. But it's amazing how right after he holds Houston accountable for one of the biggest stories coming out of there in years, with that nasty shooting that happened because of corrupt cops, all of a sudden David ended up with a target on his back. And all this new stuff supposedly came out. Well, folks, FYI, I'm going on the record to say I am supporting David and News Now Houston in this fight. And until he's convicted, and until his appeals have been heard, and until anything else has happened, that's my stand. Our government targets each and every one of us. I have been accused of grand theft auto from a vehicle I bought at a dealership just because a cop didn't fucking like me. I've had ex-wife accuse me of sex crimes against my own child. That turned out to be nothing but a crock of horse shit. Artemis Pyle. He either had to plead guilty or do 25 years for the same thing they were accusing Dave from News Now Houston of. Folks, this is America, and your government will do anything it can to divide you, to separate you, to make somebody a bad person even if they're not, all because some government person wants a notch in their belt. I strongly urge each and every person in this country to either support him in this fight or at least have the brains to sit back and wait for all judgment to be cast. Let's talk about Brett Kavanaugh. Same thing there. I don't even need to say anything about Brett Kavanaugh because everybody knows what I'm talking about. This whole country full of bullshit tried to convict him of a crime that never even happened. Never happened. Tried to accuse him of all this crazy sexual drunken, that never happened. I was in the courtroom when Artemis Pyle was found not guilty. The first time around he pled guilty because he was looking at 25 years. Or probation, which one? Well, his victims are adults today. His alleged victims are adults today. And when I met them and spoke to them in his last court appearance when they found him not guilty, the victims all pointed everything directly at their mother. My father never did anything, but he paid the price. I see the same thing happening here with News Now Houston. But I see a government that is reaching for something that it shouldn't be. J.C. Playford, until all appeals are heard, until everything's heard, and Dave's walking around as a free man today. That should tell you something. There's some things in the makings here. I believe Dave from News Now Houston is an innocent man at this time. And until I have real proof, I will always believe that. And I'm asking each and every one of you that get out there and want to hold your government accountable to realize what's going to happen when they come for me. Well, they went after Jeff Graves. They went after Carlos Miller. They've gone after J.C. Playford. They've gone after Jerry Nance. They've gone after Ed Peruta. Who haven't they gone after? They're just drawing straws. And we as Americans need to stand strong. And that's what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to support News Now Houston until all the facts are truly in. That is truly the American way.
Oh, yeah, we got JC on the line.
Summary judgment.
I know that.
Hey, what did it say on your shirt?
On my shirt?
Yeah.
What color was it?
White with letters like that or something.
It said that guy.
Oh, you're that guy?
I'm that guy. You didn't know that? You've never seen that shirt?
Never seen that one, JC.
It's got a little camera behind it.
Well, JC, just to let you know, we were planning during this 2-hour block to talk about the Trooper Miller accident last year in Connecticut. We may not have enough time, and we may go over the 2 hours, and then we'll cut it and make it into an extra segment.
So, JC, do you have any more comments on what we've been talking about today that's going on down in with News Now Houston? We just listened to your video. It was very articulate, very well done. Where'd you do that? In Florida?
Yeah, I shot it in the backyard here.
Yep.
Florida.
Yep. And why don't you talk a little bit about your relationship with Dave and what you two do? Because what you two do is really quite different. It's kind of the same, but it's very different.
Yes, it is. I mean, you got to understand, Dave and I, just like the rest of the people out there doing what we do, we have a on-surface relationship. You know, it's not like we're hanging out, we're drinking buddies and all this, but we kind of are all going in the same direction, kind of.
Yep.
Yeah, so we all kind of just find out and keep tabs of each other. But it's kind of been considered a movement here, okay? And the whole world's got to understand, we're all targets. Anybody who has the guts to challenge authority better understand they're going to get charged with something. What it is, who knows? But they're going to get it. Not if, it's when. Because government is bullies. And when it comes to David, I don't know all the ins and outs. I haven't read all the reports. Okay? But I know there's an ex-wife involved. Okay? I know I've sat in courtroom after courtroom after courtroom, and I've watched all kinds of things that get said between ex-wives and ex-husbands. I've sat in courtrooms where parents have accused other parents. Here's a fine case right here. Artemis Pyle, world famous rock and roller, Leonard Skinner, they offered him a plea deal. You can walk on probation or do 25 to life. With no evidence at all, other than an ex-wife saying this, ex-girlfriend saying this happened. Okay? The alleged victims in Artemis Pyle, when they grew up, talked to me on camera and said it never happened. Okay? I know that if you leave one parent alone who has an attitude with their child for a long period of time, that child will develop that same attitude. And their child will say anything that parent said. Anything. So until all the evidence is out, we, as American citizens, doing what we do, have to be there for each other to the very end of it all. If we start collapsing, that's what they want. Well, divide and conquer. Let's get rid of them one at a time.
JC, I agree completely with what you're saying, and basically I think if the message is right, we should consider David Warden to be innocent until somebody puts all of the facts on the table and proves them beyond a reasonable doubt.
Exactly. I mean,
Well,
I
Jay-
had these cops charge me with grand theft auto just because they want to get rid of me for a couple of days.
Yeah, we saw that.
Sorry, I bought from a dealership.
Hey JC,
Okay.
Hey JC, we got some more calls coming in. Maybe they're coming from Texas, and we want to hear what people are going to say. Okay, so we'll talk to you later.
All right.
Okay.
We do have a call from Bristol.
Line 2.
From Bristol, Connecticut. I've spoken to this person before. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hi, you're on summary judgment.
Hey, Rachel, how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. This is Jason from Bristol, right down the road from you guys.
I
Yeah.
know, right down the road.
I've been actively following this case. I had a conversation with Ed earlier in the week.
You
Okay.
did?
I did, Ed. You and I talked via Facebook.
Yes, we did.
And I'm a little troubled by what's happening in today's show. Not because, well, first of all, let me start with, I am definitely one of the people that CJ or Earl David Warden would consider to be a troll. In terms of my communication with both of them, I've had some pretty heated Facebook conversations back and forth and everything else. And when I'm looking at this, it just seems like there's a lot of information that's not coming out. And if you'll indulge me, I'd be glad to give you a couple of examples.
Go ahead.
So, just in JC's video, when, first of all, I understand that JC and most of the people in this community have been mistreated, but when we're painted as trolls that don't support the movement, I think it's exactly the opposite. A lot of us have looked at the information at hand and developed opinions based on what we've seen that we do support the movement, and we think people like News Now Houston actually may be hurting the movement in terms of the negative attention that they're bringing to it, not based on their past convictions, not even based on their current charges, but based on how things are always spun with a certain narrative and how basically things are told that aren't true. And I don't blame Earl David Warden for all of that, because in some cases, in JC's video, he brings up the Houston police story that Earl was covering a Houston police story, and all of a sudden this warrant happens. Well, I think even Earl will admit that this all started with his Shell arrest. As he says, he was unlawfully arrested very clearly at Shell. That's true. But what's also true is it's not necessarily that the Deer Park police are in the pockets of Shell, because Earl then released a video about Tim Hill, and I quote where he said, "I know where he lives. I know who his family members are, his spouse, his daughter. I can tell you how to find his daughter." Those are things that he said in the video that he immediately released, along with other things about Shell's security, that caused Tim Hill from Shell to call the Deer Park Police Department. The Deer Park Police Department started to assess whether Earl David Warden was a security threat and started to look into his background. When they found charges, they found allegations against him from his daughters that were never prosecuted, and reached out and started their own investigation. It's hard to say that anything happened in Houston led to this, given that the release of his interrogation that went out there was in December of 2017. So I just think that the way the narrative is being spun and then being repeated here is something that's not necessarily the case. And there are plenty of us who have disagreements about the facts of the case. Those haven't come out. There's a trial that's going to come, and I don't know anybody that doesn't support him getting a fair trial.
for years and years.
Anything else?
Well, sure. I mean, I can get into specifics when we talk about, when Earl was talking to you, he said he's never really discussed his past. He's not hiding it, but that he hasn't discussed it. And testimony in a court case in Galveston, Texas, where he was a witness in a court case, and questions about his past came up, he spun that there was a Romeo and Juliet story and that he was 17 and the girl was 19 and her father was mad. When in reality, we know what the allegation was in the original rape case was that he was dressed as a security guard, pretended to be a cop, pulled a woman over, handcuffed her, and raped her at gunpoint. That was the allegation. So the truth of the matter is people like Earl David Ward and those of us who believe in the First Amendment and who believe in the community, we see him as being a harmful member, and we're just not buying it anymore.
So let me comment on that. I think it's been clear in this show that we've stayed away from the allegations. Number one, we haven't focused on the allegations. There's a lot of controversy out there about the allegations, and I think Ed's a lot more familiar with them than I am. So the part of your commentary that I'm going to focus on is, because I've had these thoughts myself about certain issues, is this kind of conduct, the kind of coverage that J.C. Playford and David Warden engage in, does it actually hurt the movement? And because it's extreme to a certain extent. And these are my thoughts on it. People engage in this kind of behavior when they feel like they can't get anywhere by being rational or logical. I mean, I've been in court before where you try to approach a case from a legal standpoint, and this happens in family court all the time, which I do not do. I have, but I'm not a family court lawyer, where it digresses from legal argument, from properly crafted motions, etc., the rules of evidence, to name-calling, aggressive confrontational behavior. And if the lawyer on the other side's engaging in that, and you're not, your client's looking at you like you're being steamrolled. The other attorney's getting away with everything under the sun. You're trying to go by the rules, and you're losing. You're losing the battle. Not only are you losing the battle, but you're losing your client, because the client's like, what kind of lawyer do I have here? The other lawyer's super aggressive, advocating for their client, and my lawyer's here trying to cite some practice book rule. And I liken that to a situation of where people see police officers engaged in conduct. They try to approach it in a rational way. Maybe you file a lawsuit in federal court. Well, you know what happens there? The federal court judge says, "Oh, they have qualified immunity. Oh, it's dismissed on summary judgment. Oh, your lawyer, some solo practitioner, doesn't have the money to be able to do the depositions and do the discovery that the lawyers for the city do, or that the lawyers for the corporation do. So you lose." And you look at it and you're like, well, I don't really get anywhere by playing the rules, by being courteous, by being nice. I got to take another tact here. And if that tact includes being less than objective and getting my viewpoint out there no matter what to try to change the system, well, that's what this requires, because playing fair doesn't change anything. And so that's what I was kind of talking about earlier in the show. When a revolution starts, you need a certain kind of person like that. They are not being objective. They are skewing it whatever way they can, because to them the ends justify the means. And if the means include going after it in this fashion, that's the way you go after it, because it's going to make change. And then all of a sudden, when the change has kind of been made and more rational people come on the scene, people who would not have been the revolutionaries, people who would not have gotten the change started to begin with, they come on the scene and they say, oh, these people kind of embarrass us. Look at the way they're going at things. We should go at it in a more orderly fashion, now that the courts are maybe listening and now that you can pursue it this way. Those people become a total embarrassment. We don't want them around, and now they hurt the movement. Well, you know what? In my opinion, there would be no movement if you didn't have these people to start with. I mean, you can look at all the movements. You can look at how women, the suffragettes acted. I mean, they were seen as disgusting, and what are they doing out there being that way, demanding the right to vote, marching. Black people, what are they doing? Oh my God, the people that started it. But once the movements got off the ground, then you have a whole nother type of person coming in to carry it forward. So I like to recognize that you need different kinds of people to get things done. And so I think we need David Wardens, we need J.C. Playfords, but we also need people like you.
Jason.
Jason, we need people like me, who I think I'm more, I don't know Jason, but I've heard what he said, and I believe I'm much more like Jason than J.C. Playford or David Wardens.
Hold on a minute.
So
Master
we need
Control,
everybody.
on the capture counter, what are we at? It says 1 hour and 47 minutes.
Okay, so let's keep going.
Jason, let me see if I can evaluate and respond to some of the things you said. Do you believe that the Shell, in doing a background check on Earl David Warden, discovered an incident in his past and began to investigate it further?
No, but what I'm saying happened, or what I'm saying is a reasonable thing to believe happened, is that David's past, he's certainly right about one thing, it's not hidden. He's on the sex offender registry. People know that he's out there. And when he made the video directed at Tim Hill saying, I can tell you how to find his daughter,
I got it.
As any reasonable father would do, I think that he was in fear that someone who had been convicted of rape is coming and making a video saying, I know where to find your daughter, and called the police. And I think that that's what led to Deer Park. Not to mention, as well, in that video, he talked about, I know where the high-pressure gas lines are in Shell. I know how many security guards they have on at any time. None of that is illegal, those things that he said, but it certainly is enough to have caused Shell concern and Tim Hill personally concern.
Let me
the Deer Park police.
Then
looked into the background.
Let me see if I can elicit from you the response that I'm really looking for, and I feel that you're aware of. Do you think that Shell in a community has a lot of political influence when a big refinery is in your town, that they weigh in on a lot of political decisions?
I'm sure that they do.
Okay, now, these allegations are in some cases 22 years old and maybe as much as 30 years old or whatever. Do we agree on that?
We do.
Do we agree that there's been nothing, to our knowledge, in Earl David Warren's background for the last 10, 15, 20 years?
Well, I guess the phrase "to our knowledge" is the key. So
we have no evidence of any criminal activity on the part of Earl David Warden for 15 years.
Any criminal activity, anything related to this, I have no evidence of.
Okay, I don't, you don't, and I don't think anybody else does. We're talking about an incident that's in some cases alleged to be 22 years old and in some cases alleged to be 33 years old.
And let me interject with victims who are now adults.
Yep, got it.
Who are telling the same story.
Got it. Now let's assume that the victims have been telling this story publicly to law enforcement continually for 33 or 22 years. And law enforcement chose not to pick up the case and run with it as a cold case. until recently. Fair enough?
Yes, December of 2017 was when they interviewed him.
So between whenever and 2017, nobody was looking into the allegations of the alleged victims. But all of a sudden, they started. Could it be because of what Earl David Warden was doing with News Now Houston that they decided now he's come to the front burner, we've got to do something to shut him down. We got to find something.
Sure, it could, but part of my problem with that argument is the potential for a conspiracy does not a conspiracy make.
I agree with you. What I'm saying is...
Let me talk. One of my questions would be, have the victims tried to pursue this all these years? In other words, I've represented people who have come to me and said, things happened to me, and I want the police to get involved and make an arrest. And so as a lawyer, you contact the police, you present your side of it, you gather the evidence, your client submits to an interview, and the police either do or don't make an arrest. And if they don't, you try to convince them to. Was any of that going on? And if it was, why didn't the police pursue it?
Because Earl David Warden, who is working as News Now Houston, became a high-profile person. And, okay, now let's dig into his background. Now, Jason, I told you, I've been arrested before. No secrets. I told you that, correct?
Yes, you did.
Okay, now, 1995, 30 days after the Murrow building blew up in Dallas, Texas, okay, I walked into the VA federal building in Hartford, Connecticut, went to the director of the VA and said to her, does it take a Ryder truck to get you off your ass? And I was told, you can't say that in this building because of what happened in Murrow, at the Murrow Federal Building. And here's what I said. You got ATF, DEA, the federal police force, the marshal's office, and everybody else in this building. Get them to come up to the third floor, and I'll say it again right in front of them. And within 3 days, that director was asking me to make a formal complaint against the person who caused my being pissed off. And I said, you gave me my decision. I've been waiting 1.5 years. He's your problem, not my problem. Okay? And it happened to be that an adjudication officer in the VA was offering information out of my private VA file to law firms in Hartford to go against me in court, which is a violation of my privacy rights. She didn't believe me at first, but when I told her who gave me the information, and that person's now an assistant U.S. attorney, she wanted a complaint from me, and I didn't make it. But what I'm saying is I got pissed off, and I said things that I probably should not have said, but I was at a breaking point with the Veterans Administration. Now, did David Warden make statements? He probably did. Was he pissed off? He probably was. Should he be held accountable in 2019 for it? No, I don't. But I'll tell you right now, the evidence in my gut tells me that the reason this is happening is because of News Now Houston and what he does with First Amendment audits and looking into law enforcement activity. Now, did he do something? I don't know. Is there evidence? I don't know. But if there is evidence today, then that evidence has been there for 22 years. Were the alleged victims constantly knocking at the door of law enforcement saying, why aren't you doing anything? Or because he became who he is, that all of a sudden they said, now we'll go after him. So until I have more solid, verifiable evidence, I'm going to support David Warden as being innocent until proven guilty, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Well, actually, your question and Rachel's question are essentially the same, right? Have the victims continually come forward? What we do know, based on at least the public statements of one of the victims in this case now, is that they sought psychological counseling in the military. So CPS, and this is in 2002, CPS and police investigated. I don't think the case was presented to the DA. I'm not sure. It seems to me that it could be the case was allowed to go cold by the police investigator.
Okay.
I'm certainly not absolving those police. But we do know that one of the things that Deer Park police are looking for, thanks to the interview, was therapy records going way back. And one of the daughters has publicly said, nobody believed us. We've been trying to tell people the same thing for years. So I do know, as we move forward to the case and we talk about potential evidence, there is a potential for that evidence going back, therapy records and everything else over the time that are really going to make the difference into what happens here. And I want him to have a fair trial. But
there's no guarantee that he's going to have. There's no guarantee that he's going to have a trial. From what I understand, and speaking to David, he was taken into custody. He was incarcerated. He was put on bond, but there has not yet been a grand jury to indict him to prompt a trial.
Well, we don't know enough. We don't know enough about the system down there.
I don't know enough about the system.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
I said from the reporting that I've seen over the last couple of days, I hear there may be additional charges.
Oh yeah, no, prosecutors. I was a prosecutor. Believe me, if a prosecutor wants to add additional charges,
pile them on.
Yeah, there's no problem doing that. Once, because you can take an incident, and then there are a lot of different aspects of the incident that a lot of different criminal charges apply to. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I just wanted to clarify that I wasn't talking about constancy of accusation, which is what the therapy records would get at. How long has the person, reported to others that something happened? There are hearsay exceptions in these kind of cases where you can actually put on evidence that the person told a friend or told. What?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It actually told somebody about it. So I wasn't referring to that. What I was referring to was, what was the police position on this through all the years? Was it something that they gave serious investigation to? Did they listen? Did they brush it off for some reason? Why? I mean, we can all agree, if there's a dangerous sexual predator out there, then you need to act fast on it and get that person off the street. We don't want to wait 22 years and have this person walking around.
I need to ask Jason a question.
Yeah.
Jason, are you saying that one or more of the alleged victims was in the military?
I am.
Did that person make the allegation to someone in the medical community while they were on active duty?
I can only speculate on that. I believe that's true.
Okay. Did the alleged victim complete their complete military obligation, or did they get discharged for psychological reasons?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, I just want to say something to you, and this is totally off the cuff.
And then we're going to wind up with
we
this because I think
have
we're at
to.
our 2 hours. Yeah.
Let's assume that I'm in the service and I've signed up for 4 years.
Well, this is really.
And I don't want to stay in the military. And I'm in trouble, or I did something to prompt me to go to a psychologist, psychiatrist, or go get counseling. And I tell a story to the person in the military, and the person in the military recommends that I be immediately discharged. Okay?
I don't believe that's the case here, but go ahead.
I don't know what the case is.
Yeah, we don't
All
know.
I'm saying
this is getting kind of far.
why
afield.
didn't somebody be a mandatory reporter and pass the information along to law enforcement? Did they or didn't they? I don't know.
I believe that the daughter's statements have been that she was trying to put everything behind her and she was trying to suppress it and move on, and then later came back in therapy. So that's...
Jason, I don't know. All I can say is I am an absolute firm believer that a person is innocent until proven guilty, and if people that committed crimes walked in and said, I plead guilty, I did it, we'd have a much better society when they did, because I got to tell you, I was watching TV when Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald on live TV. And that was the first time that had ever been captured on live TV, a person killing somebody. But I was sitting there in November of 1963, okay, and I saw that occur on TV. That's how old I am. But listen, we got to go. We're wrapping up, and next week we're going to talk about the Connecticut State Trooper Kevin Miller investigation and the video and what's going on.
Thanks for being our one local caller of the day, Jason. We appreciate it.
And I do appreciate your comments, your opinions, and please subscribe to Summary Judgment Talk Show, and we'll be talking about this in the future, I'm sure.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Bye.
I think
We are
Then we
wrapping
need
up,
to wrap
even
up.
if you cut it off. Wrap it
Yeah.
up. See everybody next week.
Bye-bye.